gay-free Memphis.
What I'm trying to do is change the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people have these conversations after disasters happen in a particular area.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, why not start having these discussions sooner rather than later?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I like to think of you as the gatekeeper of Brooklyn. Do you see yourself as that title? Or?
A combination of, I would like to say, the gatekeeper of the resources for Brooklyn.
Okay.
To make sure that Brooklyn gets its fair share of resources and don't allow those resources that come in to go to just one particular community, but to go throughout the entire borough.
Okay, that's a nice place to start. Do you mind introducing yourself to the audience as to who you are and the role you play?
Mm-hmm. I'm Eric Adams. I'm the Brooklyn Borough President. New York City has 5 boroughs: Brooklyn, Queens, Manhattan, the Bronx, and Staten Island. Brooklyn is the largest with 2.6 million people, and 47% of those people speak a language other than English at home. My primary goal as the borough president is really to be the individual who ensures that the city council and the mayor, after passing their budget and determine how resources are sent throughout the city, that Brooklyn receives their fair shares on every area, from policing to education to the sanitation to fixing potholes, to make sure that we have enough pots and homeless shelters that people can eat. It's a complete combination. Any given day, there's a ton of things that we're doing differently in the borough.
So, were you born and raised here? What's your background in regards to?
I was born in Brooklyn.
Okay.
Brownsville. We moved to Queens for a short period of time, and I was able to escape and return back to the great borough of Brooklyn.
I feel a type of way that you're speaking about Queens that way because I'm from Queens. But I do have Brooklyn envy, as I was saying to him. I wish I could live here. I absolutely love Brooklyn. Best restaurants, best culture.
Yes.
This is where New York City is, in
Yes,
my opinion.
Yes. Could not have said it better.
Yes,
you know
yes.
that I think that Brooklyn is a place where other Americans come and rehearse to get it right.
That's
right. And the reason is not merely because of one particular culture. What makes us great is the diversity. When you start mixing up and having a cross-pollination of ideas, of culture, sound, music, food, thinking, it comes out to something great. And so it's the integrated interactions that create this Brooklyn product that I think is great.
Absolutely, absolutely. I could think of all the different cultures that I've encountered just being out here. I've worked in Brooklyn. I've gone to school here.
Mm-hmm.
And so like my interaction is completely different from that of Queens, but technically Queens is the world's borough.
Yes,
so
yeah.
I can't really, I know that I can compare too much. So I think that's a nice place to start off in regards to this narrative of what it means to be a Brooklynite changing between the haves and the haves-not. You see the rich living in brownstones and the poor living in Brownsville. And that's basically based on the statistical data that's behind that. My goal is to discuss social determinants of health and really seeing how that affects health outcomes within communities. You see Brownsville, for example, having higher mortality rates when it relates to chronic illnesses such as diabetes and obesity, et cetera, et cetera. This discussion really is about how do we understand your role as borough president in allocating resources for poor communities or for vulnerable communities so that they're not left behind as Brooklyn changes.
And so true. And, Brooklyn is going to evolve. And the history of Brooklyn is a history of evolution. If you look at some of the communities that are predominantly black and brown now, at one time there were different ethnic groups. Crown Heights was heavily Irish. Washington Avenue from Atlantic Avenue to Eastern Parkway was heavily Greek. Bay Ridge at one time was Irish and Italian. Now you have a large Muslim population. Sunset Park, which was predominantly Puerto Rican, is now Mexican and Chinese. Bensonhurst, at one time, people of color couldn't even go to Bensonhurst. When you look at Regina Bover incident and Willie Turk, incident back in the day when someone was killed just for being in the community. Now it's a large Chinese population, even a place like Williamsburg. You have a whole new ethnic group called hipsters, in Williamsburg, and it's difficult for the traditional Jewish population, Hasidic population, to see this change and encroachment on its society and the community that they've known for so long. Greenpoint, heavy Polish. Now you have a whole new group of young people coming from all over the globe. So the borough will evolve, and the goal is during the evolution, it's not forcefully pushing people out and making the borough too expensive for people to stay here. And that is the balance that we need to do. We need to be willing to build housing for seniors and affordable residents. We must be stern on ensuring those landlords who illegally evict or damage property to have people displaced or don't do basic repairs, they need to be incarcerated. I will continue to call on our district attorneys to prosecute aggressively those landlords who are using illegal or inappropriate action to remove long-standing tenants from their community. But then when you go to some of the health issues and you dig deeper into the report that Dr. Bassett put out, you must really look at the report and separate it from those issues that are beyond our control. There's not much we can do about it, and those issues that are within our control. Because it doesn't matter who's the borough president or the mayor or the commissioner of health. We want to empower people to deal with their health issues. And when you do that, you begin to empower people to take control and move away from the old way of thinking. When you look at the major 15 reasons Americans die, 13 of those 15s are clearly preventable. Heart disease, diabetes, colon cancer, high blood pressure, all of those items are preventable. So if we empower people to have lifestyle changes, in the process, they will be ensuring that they have the preventive health care and not so much focused on adequate health care to give them a pill or a needle or an injection or an operation that would treat a symptom and not the underlying cause. And we're not doing that. We're not doing it citywide. We're not doing it and really educating people on how the things they put in their mouths are the things that are causing them to be placed in a hospital at an earlier rate. That is my focus. My focus is to really use my personal victory over diabetes to turn around how we think about healthcare and how do we truly move towards a proactive healthcare system.
Okay, so before we get into discussing some of the policies that you've personally pushed forward to addressing those issues, do you mind sharing your personal story on how you combated diabetes?
In April of 2017, I was told by my doctor that I was diabetic. This is after going to the doctor, and I thought that I was having some serious problems with my colon because I had a pain in my stomach. The doctor did a colonoscopy and an endoscopy to check my stomach and my colon, and he stated that I had an ulcer and also had issues with my esophagus from acid reflux. But he said the most alarming thing is that I was diabetic and with a high A1C in the high teens. 8 is dangerous. Once you get into the teens, it's almost to a coma state, and he was surprised that I was not in a coma. My A1C was high. That is the rate on how they rate your sugar, too much sugar in your body. I had high blood pressure, high cholesterol, had nerve damage in my hands and feet. They said it was permanent. I had what they considered to be permanent nerve sight damage, where I lost sight in my left eye and was losing sight in my right eye. And I was told to go on insulin, and I was given medication for my cholesterol, my blood pressure, the nerve damage, my eye sight loss. So I was given a ton of medicine. And in the process, I just did something that was revolutionary. I went in Google, reversing diabetes. And I was just amazed at how much information was out there. And one of the doctors I came in contact with was Dr. Esselstyn. He's Bill Clinton's doctor as well. And I called him, and he told me to come see him. He's at the Cleveland Clinic in Ohio. And I flew down to Cleveland, Ohio. And while I was flying down, I read a book by Dr. Greger called How Not to Die. And I was just blown away what was in the book and the information that Dr. Esserton shared with me when I landed and visited him, that it was about a lifestyle change. He said, if you change your lifestyle, you'll reverse your diabetes. And in 3 weeks, after changing my lifestyle, my vision cleared up. That I was told was irreversible, and it cleared up. Then in 3 months, my A1C changed, and the diabetes went in remission, and it went down to a 5.7, which is a pre-diabetes level, and it continued to go down after that. But it was just remarkable. My ulcer cleared up, my cholesterol normalized, the nerve damage I had in my hands and feet and my thighs disappeared. As I stated, my sight cleared up, and it was just food, no medicine, just food. And that's the power of food. And I can only imagine how many of our seniors, our brothers, our sisters, our loved ones are going into the doctor's office every day, and they're giving them medicine that treats their symptoms and not the underlying cause. Don't fool yourself, folks. You get a medicine for diabetes, that sugar is not disappearing. It's being pushed in other places. You get a medicine for heart disease, it is not clearing up your heart disease. You go in and have a stent to clear up your heart, it is not clearing up the problem. It is only masking the problem. You don't want a plumber to come to your house and give you a mop when you have a leak. You want the pipe fixed. The goal now is to fix the underlying causes to diseases that are reversible, and we must move in a direction to do so. And so I feel much better, and my diet has changed, and it's a whole food, plant-based diet, and it's a totally different outcome and outlook on life.
So I've been doing a lot of community interviewing with people of Brooklyn, and over again, people are saying we need more resources. We need more resources for education on chronic illnesses. And so I really wanted to discuss that with you. I've read that you, in your first term, allocated $1 million towards health spending. Is that correct? And do you mind sharing some of the initiatives that you've put forward or policy to advance the health of the people of Brooklyn?
You know, what's interesting to me is that human beings I consider human beings to be like an odd-shaped glass. No matter how you pour the water in, the glass is going to level out and meet its need. You know, how much resources is enough? You know, even when I made $5,000 a year, I said if I can only make 10. When I made 150, I said if I only can make 200. You never get enough. And we need to be honest about that. We're going to always call on more resources, but the name of the game is what are we doing with what we have? When we did an analysis, when we first came into Borough Hall, we saw that we're leaving too many free resources on the table. And so before we talk about what additional resources we need, what are we doing with the resources we have? How many people are filling out for WIC and they are eligible for it to get free food stamps? And they're able to get, and they're eligible to receive that. We send back billions of dollars to Washington, D.C. and to the state on free services that we are eligible for that we're not utilizing. So let's first do an analysis, as we're doing here, with a program we teamed up with called Benefit Kitchen. It allows people to put their name and information into an app that gives them a printout of all the things that they're eligible for. So we need to first make sure that we're using the resources that we have. Then we need to have a real close analysis about discretionary spending. We have to stop feeling as though we can spend money on those things that are not dealing with our bottom line and improving the overall quality of our lives. You can't say that I don't have the money to buy a computer, but you have a $200 pair of Air Jordans on. You can't say that I don't have the money to do a down payment for a house, but then you have a Lexus parked in the driveway. We just have to do some basic things. When we took office, Brooklyn was going through a very serious credit card debt. And my goal was to reverse it in 4 years to 4%. And we have done a successful job of reversing it to 7%. Our credit card debts and improvements. So we are showing people financial literacy, how to make smart decisions, how to buy a home, save for college, make the right retirement investments. That is part of the overall goal that we want to do, to teach people how to use the resources that they have. Now, that is not to say that we're not going to continue to push and fight for the dollars we need in the borough to receive the things that we need. Too many of our schools don't have proper Wi-Fi and technology, and we spent over $100 million into our public school system to bring our school systems up to par. We want to continue to focus to do that, but I'm a big believer that before we say we need more, let's do an analysis of what we're doing with what we have.
In the communities, how do people start to advocate for themselves before, like you said, saying that we need this, we need that? How do you change those discussion of, these neighborhoods are bad, they're never going to fix it? How do we change that discussion into something constructive as to where it could be a part of the decision-making process?
I think that's just such a great question, because it's easy to say, woe is me. How about saying, why not me? We're all in pain. If you have the fortune to live long enough, you're going to have the misfortune to experience pain. How do we turn pain into purpose? How do we start out on our block? Starting a block association in our church, starting feeding the hungry and feeding those who are in need and empowering them. We walk past people in homeless shelters every day. How about stopping and saying, hey, come worship with me? You may not be able to tithe and offer, but you know what? This is part of my tithe and offering. It's not about just giving 10% back in the plate every Sunday. 10% of our lives should go back to giving to someone, and we're falling short on that. Many of us have degrees in educational achievement. How about volunteering? School may be from 8 to 3, but nothing stops us from doing small study groups with young people, teaching them how to read and how to write. Some parents can't afford tutors. We can be those tutors for free. Many people are not willing to use the human capital to change their community. If we want to stop people from selling drugs on the street corners, how about having church services on the street corners? Churches should be without walls. I don't know no drug dealer would like to be standing there while you're singing Nearer to God or Thee. So instead of saying what's wrong with our community, we should say what is going to be right with our community, because I'm going to do it. One person said one day that I love so much, they said, take the O out of God and put the E and say, I get. Instead of I got to clean up my block, how about I get to clean up my block? Instead of I got to go to a job, how about I get to go to a job? How about I get to do something nice for someone because I'm healthy enough and I'm blessed every day that I can do it? So it starts with joining the community board, going to block association meetings, going to precinct council meetings, going to community meetings, getting involved. And if you don't have those meetings in your block, then start them. Nothing stops any individuals from saying, I'm going to find like-minded people in my community, and we're going to start an initiative together and to make sure our community is a better place. Too many people want to see others do it for them instead of saying, change is going to begin with me. I live on a 100-point system.
That's it.
That
Yes.
I start every day.
Yeah.
And by the end of the day, I want to have scored 100 points. And so if I hold the door for someone, that's a 5-pointer. If I get up on the train when someone needs a seat, that's a 10-pointer. If I push someone's car who's stuck, that's a 20-pointer. So I add those points up so to make sure by the time I end the day that I did something to give back. And if at the end of the day I only did 50 points, then I take $50 and contribute to something in need. At the end of the day I only did 70 points, then I'll take $30 and contribute to someone that's in need. And we all know who's in need in our community. There are days I'll just put that $30 in an envelope and slip it under the door of the person who lives down the block that has a lot of children, and just say, God love you. And it's just amazing. You can see the person the next day, their walk is different because they know that someone said they matter. And far too many times in my life, my family has been the recipient of people when we were children who used to just say, you know what, the 6 of you matter and we're going to be there for you. And I want to make sure I'm there for those people who are waiting and wishing that someone is there for them.
I get it. I really do, and I appreciate you sitting with me. Thank you for opening up the doors to me coming in and having this discussion. It means the world.